On August 5, 1962, the world awoke to the shocking news. Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood's golden goddess, was gone. Officially, her death was ruled a probable suicide, but in the days and weeks that followed, another quieter drama began to unfold, not in the newspapers, but in lawyers' offices and bank vaults. Her will, worth millions in today's money, was suddenly contested by people who barely knew her. Bank accounts vanished. Jewelry collections worth a fortune were nowhere to be found, and whispers began to spread that the will itself might have been swapped out entirely. This is the story of the Marilyn Monroe will mystery, a tangled web of money, power, and the shadows of Hollywood's underworld. Marilyn Monroe died alone in her Brentwood home in the early hours of August 5, 1962. She was 36 years old. In the glare of the cameras, the official story was simple: an overdose of barbiturates, a troubled actress, a tragic end. But behind the scenes, something much more complicated and potentially darker was happening. In 1961, a year before her death, Monroe had updated her will. According to friends, she wanted most of her estate, then valued at roughly $1.6 million, about $15 million today, to go to her acting coach, Lee Strasberg, with smaller amounts left to her half-sister Bernice Miracle and her trusted secretary, May Rice. She also allocated funds to support her mother, Gladys, who lived in a psychiatric institution. It was a fairly straightforward arrangement, but those who knew Monroe claimed she was planning another revision, a final version, to be signed later in 1962, one that would cut out certain people she no longer trusted, and that would set up a foundation for underprivileged children. That version was never found. Within days of her death, multiple individuals came forward claiming a stake in her fortune. Some were expected: her half-sister, her lawyer Milton Rudin, and Strasberg. But others were far more surprising: a former business manager she had fired years earlier, an ex-boyfriend with no documented legal claim, and two recent friends from the New York social scene who had allegedly been promised personal gifts. The contest was aggressive. Lawyers began filing claims in Los Angeles Superior Court, and the probate process, which might have been completed in a matter of months, stretched into years. That's when things got stranger. When Monroe's estate was inventoried, several large gaps emerged. Bank accounts. At least two of Monroe's personal bank accounts were nearly empty. Records showed large cash withdrawals in the week before her death, transactions she never discussed with her accountant. Jewelry. Monroe's extensive collection of diamonds, pearls, and custom pieces from movie studios was largely missing. Only a handful of items, mostly costume jewelry, were cataloged. Art and clothing. Several expensive works of art, couture gowns, and furs had disappeared from her home between the time of her death and the estate inventory. One of Monroe's housekeepers later told a friend that men in suits had come to the house the day after she died, before the will was even read, and removed several boxes from her bedroom closet. In 1982, a former Los Angeles court clerk gave a shocking interview. She claimed that Monroe's will had been retyped before it was entered into probate. According to her, the new version still named Strasberg as the primary beneficiary, but some clauses were missing, including one believed to name a children's charity. Why would someone alter a will? One theory pointed to the influence of certain Hollywood agents who saw Strasberg, a powerful acting coach with deep industry connections, as the safest person to control Monroe's legacy. Another theory was darker, that the mob, which had rumored ties to some of Monroe's acquaintances, wanted access to her estate to settle debts and funnel money. Lee Strasberg inherited not only Monroe's money, but also her personal effects: clothing, letters, diaries, and photographs. For years, these items were stored away, unseen by the public. In 1999, his widow Anna Strasberg auctioned them for more than $13 million. Some critics argued that if Monroe's intended final will had been honored, those items might have been donated to museums or charities. It's important to note, no court ever ruled that Strasberg acted improperly, but the secrecy surrounding Monroe's belongings fueled decades of speculation. Several of Monroe's close friends claimed she had been under increasing pressure in her final months, from studio executives, from the Kennedys' inner circle, and from figures linked to organized crime. Some believed she was planning to write a memoir that would expose political and entertainment industry secrets. If true, the disappearance of her personal papers and possibly the will itself takes on a more sinister dimension. One name that surfaced repeatedly in whispered conversations was Mickey Cohen, the infamous Los Angeles mobster. While no evidence ties in directly to Monroe's death or estate, Cohen had deep connections in both Hollywood and politics, and was known to use intimidation to influence legal outcomes. It took nearly 2 years for Monroe's estate to be settled. By the end, legal fees had consumed a significant portion of her assets. Strasberg remained the primary beneficiary, with smaller amounts to Monroe's mother, sister, and secretary. The missing assets were never recovered, and no criminal investigation was ever opened. Even decades later, questions remain. Was the will swapped out before it was filed? Who took the missing jewelry, art, and cash? And perhaps most hauntingly, what was in the final version Monroe intended to sign? Today, the Marilyn Monroe will mystery stands as one of Hollywood's most enduring legal enigmas. It's a story where fame, money, and power collided in a fog of secrecy. And, like many tales in Tinseltown, the truth may be forever locked away in safe deposit boxes, in private archives, or in the memories of those who swore never to speak.